Have you ever wondered why autistics can persist and maintain so much energy and focus on objects, topics, and subjects? And we cannot endure the social environment. Outside of autism, we know this is on a spectrum as well. All internal states are on a spectrum. Some people are more so-called extroverted, and some people are introverted. So what makes us who we are? Especially since we basically have the same regions, the same networks, all of these same things in our brain and nervous system. So I really like the idea of how autistics have so much comfort on certain tasks in certain environments versus the other ones. Now, remember, the biology that gives us autism allows us to be comfortable within ourselves. And think about B3, restricted fixated interest, that are abnormal in intensity or focus. So, what is that? Why so much energy on a topic, subject, or object versus anything else? I like the idea of learning about these internal calculators that we have throughout our nervous system. Remember, the brain is a prediction machine, okay? It's a metabolic bank account. Remember the Lisa Feldman Barrett comparison or analogy of this. It's trying to allocate energy throughout our body and brain as little as possible. It doesn't want to work. It just wants to conserve energy and use as little as possible. So it makes sense we have internal calculators. And there's one I want to talk about. It's in the locus coeruleus, which is where epinephrine and norepinephrine is released for the brain. Now we have adrenaline from our adrenals, which is for the body. And these don't cross over. So let's talk about this brain adrenaline, essentially. Neural energy, okay? So essentially, we are releasing this at all times. Of course, you can think about certain activities and tasks require more. So it fluctuates. Now, let's think about, let's introduce here what makes us persist, okay? The enjoyment of it. So we'll need some dopamine as well. Dopamine is drive and wanting and liking. So that keeps us on task. That keeps us motivated on the topic or the subject or the environment, whatever it is the living organism considers that they want and they like. This is all very fascinating. So if we're thinking about a runner, because it uses a lot of energy, a runner sets off and he or she is running. And that's a lot of brain energy. And this internal calculator is registering, it's calculating. How much effort am I putting in versus the outcome? And you can also think about that crossover into runner's high. If you've ever spoken to a runner, it's pretty easy and common to find runner's high, right? That's a lot of dopamine being released in concert with that epinephrine. It feels good. They are getting this effort and outcome to match and really exceed or even match what they are wanting, their goal. But after a point in time, there's so much energy being used, and then the runner might even slow down and start to struggle. So that calculator is registering a lot of effort here versus not a lot of outcome. What am I putting in effort if I'm not receiving the expected outcome? Now, remember, we'll talk little bit about reward prediction error and some more dopamine in the episode. But for now, I don't want to spend too much time on that. So as we're wearing down and that effort is not matching the outcome, the glia cells are going to come in and kind of shut off the locus coeruleus. Remember that metabolic bank account and the activity, okay? Now with socialness, you can see that the glia cells and this brain energy and the dopamine, the glia cells are going to come in fast here because we don't like that. We don't like the expectation of it. So the dopamine is already low. It's It's taking a lot of energy for us to navigate that environment so the epinephrine is high, but the outcome is not there immediately. We are more prone to have that energy shut off. If you think about autistic burnout, which is also something pretty common, you can understand this because all of that energy required to navigate the social world, that outside environment, that is in contrast to those topics, subjects, and objects. Seeing this, you can understand why autistics can persist in some things and even create this superpower, the so-called superpower. And then that socialness would be, of course, the super deficit. And if you think about neuroplasticity too, becoming who we are, as we experience more of something, it makes us more of that. It strengthens the connectivity running through the brain. Everything we just discussed too with those altered networks and dopamine and epinephrine. If we can persist for long bouts, endure things, the dopamine is going to stay elevated because it's rewarding. Now, with the objects, topics, and subjects, that is rewarding to us. So the dopamine is going to always regulate that calculator versus anything else. Now, it's specific to the living organism, of course. Even within autistics, we can socialize at different amounts and face different frequencies and intensity of that withdrawal and burnout. So as you learn about these internal calculators and what makes some things comfortable, like learning a specific item or a few specific items versus the the socialness, and even within the school day with all of that subject switching, that is just depleting dopamine and burning so much energy that the glias are going to come in and shut that off. We cannot persist in that constant switching. Now, this is not very complicated once you understand this type of things. Socialness requires a lot of energy for the autistic phenotype. So be on the lookout for some episodes covering certain internal calculators that we have and why autistics are so unique and can persist on some topics, some environments, and completely it's a no-go for others.